Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock and we can start. If you could request everybody to please settle down. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michele Lansigan and I'm a term faculty in the chemistry department. I teach chemistry courses for non-science majors and I also teach a complex problems class called Science in Pop Culture. And I'm also the faculty liaison for AU Cornerstone and AU Compass. And I am here today with. Hi, everyone. I'm Clarissa. Ihssen. I'm one of our many fantastic librarians. I cover all the STEM departments. So I'm half of CES and I work with Michele all the time. Yes, we collaborate on a lot of courses. So today we'll be sharing how you can integrate AI, specifically ChatGPT, to your courses, not as a replacement, but as a tool or supplement to help students analyze, reflect, and critically engage with your courses. So most of the examples I'm going to share are situated from my complex problems class, but the strategies, the examples, and the approaches are applicable to a wide variety of disciplines. So generative AI is here, and whether we address it explicitly or not, students are encountering and using it, whether they admit it or not. So we hear ChatGPT, we have Copilots, Bard, and you think it's Gronk, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot out there, and it's reshaping how our students think, write, and learn. And when ChatGPT emerged, a lot of our students were curious. Some were skeptic, some were excited, and a lot of them were actually quietly experimenting on how to use this for their courses. So, as faculty, we had similar reactions. A lot of us were excited, most of us are skeptics, but there's also this fear or feeling of uncertainty. And we feel most of the time all these three things at once, and they are, of course, feeling these are all completely valid. So this session is not really about telling any of you to use AI in your courses, but we are here to offer you a framework, a platform examples that you can tailor specifically for your courses. So before we dive in, I would love to get a quick sense of where everyone is. So please go to menti.com, scan this QR code, I'm not sure if you can see it, or go to www.menti.com and use the following code to join. And then over right here. All right. Oh, sorry. This is the number on top. We also read it out. Yeah. So it's 9463078. You go to Nike.com and the QR code is right here on the side. So this is our cloud in one word. What comes to mind when you think about students using AI in your class? So there's cheating, okay, shortcuts, making it fun. So as we can see, and shortcuts, they're becoming bigger. So a lot of you are taking the same problem. Let's just give it 1 minute. From single, inconsistent words. Reality, there's a huge like all right. Here, you search these are all definitely responses. But yes, the not surprised that cheating and shortcuts were the biggest words, right? Okay, so let's just wait. We have 35 responses. Give it a few more seconds. Skipping, fiction, use. Okay, that's what maybe is not maybe. But bottom line is, people think about shooting and shortcuts whenever they think about it. So, which best describes your current use? I'm not sure if you can see it, but you have it on your phone. Which best describes your use of ChatGPT in more teaching? So, the first one is I actively integrate into assignment math activities. I love it, but to explicitly teach with it, I'm still experimenting, figuring it out. I discourage those practice use, or I haven't used it at all yet. So a lot of people, they try to pick up experiment, figure it out, and still also there. Um, yeah, have people to be expected in their course. Okay. And then one final question before we move on here. How can you think here guiding students in using AI tools like ChatGPT? So zero, comfortable. I'm here studying one somebody quite three neutral, learn outside students. Four, this one some unsure others how to address it. They are very unemployed and tired. So we do have someone in broken and I'm still refining myself and also learning alongside my students because there's a lot of things that emerge uh, that is very interesting. All right. So with that, let's move. You can stay back here. All right. So wherever you are in that spectrum of questions, this session will you to get to meet you where you are. So whenever we see those new technologies, they often trigger a fear. Like students will maybe stop thinking for themselves and rely heavily on these tools and not think for themselves anymore. So for example, in the 60s and 70s, when calculators arrived, math teachers worried that students will lose their number sense. Like they will just not know how to add or subtract anymore. When computers and internet came into the picture, when they became mainstream, um, people became worried of students just plagiarizing things or, doing shortcuts and things like that. But in case, did we eliminate any of this? No, right? But they're still here until now. Essentially, we learn to teach through these tools. So calculators have become a part of problem solving. Computers and the internet gave rise to information literacy. So in other words, we've been here before. So just like this tool, ChatGPT is the latest chapter in that same story. So the question here is it really whether we should use AI or not? But we'd like to frame it in such a way that how can we use it thoughtfully to enhance student learning? And I always ground my classes in information literacy. That's why I always invite Clarissa at the beginning of my class to give a talk. Students must be grounded in information literacy before they can critically and responsibly engage with AI tools like ChatGPT. So, why this session and why now? Students are adopting AI rapidly, often faster than institutions can respond. And at the same time, we are seeing real concerns about, strategic bias, misinformation, and of course, misuse. And this moment just presents an opportunity for us not to entirely ban AI, but to use it intentionally to strengthen the way that our students learn. So hopefully by the end of the session, our goal is for you to walk away with strategies for integrating AI to promote critical thinking among your students, reflect on opportunities and challenges on how you can incorporate AI into your own teaching practices, and design activities that encourage ethical and responsible use. So for our session, we are dividing this into two parts. The first part is building information literacy foundations, which will be taken care of by uh, uh, Clarissa here. And then part two will be me discussing how to integrate ChatGPT into that to my classroom. So I'm going to turn things over to Clarissa to ground us on information literacy. Yay! Great. Thanks, everyone. Um, so we've heard information literacy before. You probably have your own concept what that means. When IT and Michele and I were together, when we are talking about anything AI, we want to be grounded in information literacy and these concepts before they can critically think and responsibly engage with AI. These are the same framework tools that you would be using when you're evaluating a newspaper, when you were reading books, when you're looking at social media. These are still the same skills that you've been using and teaching for forever and a day. We're just adding them to a new technology, and I don't want this to be scary. You will see that my slides are nowhere near as pretty as Michelle's, and I'm sorry for that. So one more time, we're going to have you go to this Menti. We have the QR code here. We'll put it back on the screen in a second. And I want to know, what is your definition of information literacy? On this slide, we also have Michele and I's definition, as well as the official definition according to the Association of College and Research Libraries. But because we all have our own operating understanding of what this is, and you can't have a librarian next to all the time, I want to know where we're starting. Um, so just in one sentence or in less than one sentence, what does this mean when I say rounding it up? Something that work on the unknown. What's saying that's we can we can we can do it again. Yeah, but then it's gonna stop. Yeah, so just go to that long again. Turn it for the okay. The ability to find and evaluate news information ethically and effectively. I'll revert into that one. Critical thinking and information resources. Discern the strengths and weaknesses. Learn how to use and navigate social media resources. Understand find weight and sense. Awareness, power structure, as well as critical thinking. Somebody saw my colleague's presentation before this one. Knowing how to stay ethnosynological caution. I can't even say that word. That's somebody else's. Assessing great. So it looks like we all have a pretty general understanding or baseline idea of what we're saying when we're talking about information literacy. So going back, my definition and Michelle's, I synthesize it into one sentence as knowing when you need more information, where to find it, and how to appropriately use it. Michele, being able to critically evaluate scientific and societal information, assess credibility and accuracy, and find reliable sources to make informed decisions. There are many steps in cognitive processes that need to be accomplished in order to just be critically information literate, right? We're expecting many things. The Association of How You Research Libraries, the board that makes this a really official statement, they include lots and lots of steps that we are expecting students to do. This is why they're always telling you, let us come into your class and work with things. And so they are integrated abilities encompassing many different reflectives and reactions for the discovery, understanding of how information is produced. This is a really fun thing to talk about. The use of information in creating new information. So this is all to say there's lots of definitions. And when we're talking about information literacy, we want to just be focusing on all of these different steps, regardless of if you're actually using AI, some students don't touch AI, anything. So when we're talking about information literacy and critical information literacy, one of the steps that we really emphasize is identifying and evaluating the sources, determining the bias, and then looking at the credibility of the author, publication, and sources used in articles. And this is just as important, maybe the most important things to be highlighting when we're talking about AI. Where does AI get the structure that it's pulling and it's then collecting all of this information into something new? How do you find that information? And then when it's providing you with a source, how are you identifying and evaluating those sources that it gave you? Are students identifying it? Determining bias, as we know, anything with an algorithm is prone to algorithmic bias. This is as true for Google Scholar as it is for AI. Many databases try to negate that, which is why we emphasize them. And then you still want to pay attention to the credibility of the author, the publication, the sources used in that actual article that you are reading, one from the journal. This tends to be taught in either a lateral or vertical reading. How many of you have covered up like the CRAP method before? CRAP test, currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. The people who see me in class raise their hands. Yay! So that is vertical reading. If you're looking at a newspaper article, you've often been taught, students who are taught, look at when was it written. Who is the author? What gives them authority? Why is this article relevant? So these are all looking at one article. As we're moving forward, we want students to be reading laterally. I still teach both. I say you need to sift the crap, right? It's a fun activity. We get to use a bad word in class. But SIFT is looking across sources. And this is really helpful when we're talking about AI. Many students will use AI to begin their search, and they'll start with those sources. We don't want them to end with those sources. So begin there and look at what else is available. S stands for stop. If you have anything else, just stop. Don't spread misinformation. Just stop.
is identify other sources of information. Who else is talking about this topic? If it's an important topic, many people are rapidly talking about it. F, find their coverage. And then T, trace back to the original claims. You want to look across sources because everyone knows that you're going to be looking at our About Us webpage. So they're going to say that name the best website ever. Actually, they're not going to say we're actually biased against trees or something, right? So we want to think laterally and vertically when we're talking information literacy and the information we're pulling from, and vertically is that skill that we want to practice when we're using AI. And then we have this kind of tension between AI complicates research, and we have AI generated content. We have the shallow sources, there's only 5, 3, AI pulling from other AI sources and kind of like creating this echo chamber. And then we have this general misinformation, which is complicating the research and understanding process, while at the same time, AI can be a really helpful tool for students performing research. So identifying keywords, major pillars in the field, they can help with concept mapping, citation training. This is where you trace citations, who cited whom going forward. One thing that can help using AI research is using tools that have a limited corpus that they're trained on. So, for example, the database JSTOR only has an AI tool, but only uses things in that database. The AU library has an AI tool that only pulls from the things that we own and that are given access to. So if a student uses our AI tool, they will find reliable peer-reviewed scholarly articles. Are they relevant to their source? That's a whole other discussion. That would be better than going to the free ChatGPT or the Google synopsis and seeing what that says. So there's ways to support it and ways that are complicating it. But this information literacy, these kinds of conversations can help begin thinking about how using AI, how should students be using it. And then when we're talking about integrating these information literacy skills with showing us with AI, I like to really emphasize the just difference between a database, a search engine, and generative AI. So we have ChatGPT, we all know that's doing really well, right? And then we know databases, JSTOR, ProQuest, those are containing just bodies of information. But then what is Google Scholar? It's a search engine, right? It's just like Google. But many students treat generative AI just like Google, or they treat databases just like Google. So we're coming into this middle portion, which is a struggle for our research, or library research, because they don't operate the same. And the kinds of information that you're finding in them or being shown aren't the same. So that's, I can have a whole 30-minute talk, just that alone. So other skills you need to do, verifying this information, that level reading, working across sources, and then creating and refining research questions. As we keep going, students will need to continue refining their questions. A better question is going to get you just as good of a result in a database as in some kind of generative AI tool. And then preparing students to work with AI now and beyond. Critical information literacy scaffolds into all of these different skills. So everything we've been talking about kind of builds together what you teach in your class, with the professor, and what they teach in the next class. And will be helpful when students go off into their real world. The same skills that are needed today to evaluate information are the same skills they needed yesterday for social media, and 10 years ago when we were talking about Wikipedia, and 50 years ago when newsprint was all the rage. I'm sorry. So when we're talking about the next big technology, there will be something else, but these foundational skills will still be applicable. Okay, with that, I'm going to give it to Michele, who is the real exciting portion of today's talk. All right, so I've always invited Clarissa to my class and give this session an information literacy. We have some exercises where we search sources in the library, things like that, before I actually introduce AI into our class activities.
So we can see that students are provided with a lot of information in today's age. And whenever ChatGPT spits out information, the sentences can sound very confident and logical. And that's the scary part because we don't know. Students will think, oh, it's all correct, but it's not always the case. There's just a lot of misinformation. And the scary thing is that most of this information sound directly below if they're not. So now that we have the foundation and information literacy in my classes, I'll shift now to how I integrate ChatGPT into my classroom. So when we think about that, there's a big challenge. How can we teach our students to use AI in an ethical and responsible way? So the examples I'm going to share will be mostly from my complex problems class. I teach a class called Science in Pop Culture. But as I mentioned earlier, all the strategies I'm going to share will be applicable to any course. So this specific class explores how pop culture from movies, media, news, current events shape the public perception of science. So, science can be, other people might think, let's say, watch a Marvel movie, they might think, oh, it's something interesting, but there can be like unrealistic expectations and things like that. So, in the class, students analyze how media can both illuminate or explain science, spike curiosity, and things like that. But it can also lead to misconceptions or misunderstanding. So it's a perfect segue to discuss how technology, specifically AI, shapes the knowledge and public understanding of science. So I will discuss three aspects of how I carry this out. I start first with discussing classroom norms and ethics. And I'm going to talk about how I integrated ChatGPT as a tool and how I integrated ChatGPT as a topic or object of study in my course. So before I show any AI specific activities, I always start with norms and expectations. So in my class, AI isn't assumed or hidden. It's explicitly discussed. So I explain to my students which assignments you can use AI on, which assignments you cannot use AI. So basically, I frame expectations around being transparent. So I want to be transparent with my students. So the message I reinforce is that AI is a supplement or a tool to your thinking, not a complete replacement to how you learn. So I'm sharing with you my syllabus language. I can also share this to everyone who attended today. And students just basically needed to know what is permitted or when is AI permitted. And this clarity in the syllabus just sets the tone. AI was allowed, but only for specific assignments, for specific purposes. Um, and I also encourage transparency when they use it. Tell me how you used it. So I asked students to disclose AI assistance. So, for example, AI was used for brainstorming, refining my outline, generating images, but they have to cite it and things like that. I emphasize the process of their thought process over the final product because I want to see how they utilize AI, what information did they reject, how did they evaluate it, and things like that. So this is a sample disclosure from a student. He wrote a paper and said it's quite similar because it was a special, but he said AI was utilized for this paper. The Killbot extension was used for correcting grammatical and punctuation errors, which is fine with me. And ChatGPT was used to find two popular sources which he evaluated and make sure that the paper followed the rubric. And with that, I also want to model transparency. I use ChatGPT to assist with brainstorming, refining the language for my presentation, but all the content here reflects our expertise and our instructional intent. So all of these are my idea, but I use ChatGPT to help me brainstorm, refine those ideas, and refine language as well. So before we do any AI activities, I have a small class by the way. I have 19 students, but you can set up for your own classes. We first did small group discussions just to set the tone and give concrete examples of when AI is permitted or not. So I have here, for example, I divided the students into teams of with 3 to 4 students. I gave them scenarios and I said, so group one, the students submit ChatGPT essay unedited. Group two, they brainstorm ideas, then write their own essay, and so on. And then they decide, as a team, they discuss, is it ethical, responsible, or problematic? and then they suggest a better approach, and then they share their thoughts with the class. So this is what I do in the very beginning. So just to give an example here, for example, in the first group, students submit ChatGPT essay unedited. Everybody we know this is as definitely problematic, right? This is plagiarism, academic dishonesty, and so on. So we talk about what would be a better practice here. So students said we can use it to brainstorm ideas, maybe help, generate an outline, and then ask ChatGPT to refine them, um, give suggestions on possible directions, but they should always write their essay in their own words. So, a student asked me before, can I use this app for rephrasing? And I said, for my case, I said no, because it's no longer their own words. Like they got something, we rephrase it using that app, but it's not their own words. So that really is not own. So it depends on your own perception as well. The second one, student brainstorms ideas that writes in essay, and this is responsible use for me. So they can use ChatGPT as a thinking partner to generate possible directions for their essay. But then the better practice would be follow what ChatGPT is giving you and then refine from that as well. So how does it help you brainstorm your ideas? So we have all of these questions, and then students discuss among themselves. You always have to suggest a better approach, and then we discuss as a class. So after I explain the norms in place, we give concrete examples of what's allowed and what's not allowed. Then I also integrate ChatGPT as a tool. How do we use it as a tool in the class? So we can use it for brainstorming and idea generation, as I mentioned, maybe clarifying the concepts. So I teach chemistry, and my students are non-science majors. It might be the first time you're taking a chemistry class, so stoichiometry might be a big word for them. So they can use ChatGPT to clarify those difficult concepts. And I encourage them to use it as a review partner, generate practice questions, study guides, and things like that. And I also allow them to use it for, because they do a class presentation at the end or a case study, refine their topics, help them with their outlines, refine the research questions, and so on. Okay. But the focus I emphasize is on the process, not just on the output. And I've also emphasized that yes, AI can be helpful, but it is not always right. Sometimes it gives outdated information, it makes things up, it has hallucinating references, sometimes it even gives fake quotes, and then we don't find that actual person who said it. Statistics, data, it's very finicky. And, there are a lot of sources that sound real, but aren't. So I just want to highlight that students should never just accept and copy AI. They already know that. They have to always double check the information using the skills that they've learned from Clarissa's talk. So we treat AI as an helpful assistant, not as an expert. And I always share this with my class. This is one of my favorite teaching moments. So I teach chemistry and I give them the sample problem. Element is stable isotopes. They have the AMUs right here. The atomic weight is reported to be 85.468 AMU. I asked them, what is the element? So they have to know how to do this calculation. So I showed this to them and I give them an example. This is an actual ChatGPT response. So as you can see, it explains everything. Same process as what we do in class, but the final answer is incorrect. It is not krypton. The correct answer here, so this is krypton, the correct answer is rubidium. And this would be like, oh my God, like it's not always correct. And I actually asked ChatGPT, I think you're wrong. It replied to me, oh my God. And then reworked everything and it gave me the correct answer. So that is an eye-opening moment to the students that even though it gives us the answers, we always have to evaluate it and make sure that we understand how to actually arrive at that answer. So I use it as a tool, they now understand how to use it, but then also integrate ChatGPT as a topic. So beyond using it as a tool, we also incorporate it as one of our topics for reflections, for research and things like that. So students in the class can analyze AI-generated responses for bias, misinformation, plagiarism, understanding AI hallucinations, and how to ethically use it in academic setting. So the next example I'm going to share is a team activity in my complex problems class where we incorporated all of these three bullet points. So students use AI to brainstorm ideas. They again worked in tools of 3 or 4 students. They evaluated the sources and they thought about ethical use. So they were always very reflection. And I adapted this strategy from an article from JChem, and I have that there. It discusses how to leverage ChatGPT for enhancing critical thinking skills. It was specific for chemistry, but I was able to use it in my other courses as well. So it shows a scaffolded method. So first, students set up their accounts. Um, they uh, give me one second. They drafted a response. They reworded that response. They asked ChatGPT to generate references, and then they evaluated the references, and then they revised the output for their final response. So I utilized the same thing, and they used that process to support them in this assignment. So they use ChatGPT as a tool to incorporate it into their project. So the project is how to make a science infographic. So what they did here was that they selected a scientific topic. So for example, my students selected how do electric guitars work? Can you live in Mars? What is the difference between sunscreen and sunblock? And basically, they need to translate this scientific information into something that is more digestible by the general public. So something like something visual that would allow the public to understand the scientific concept much more easily. So I have this links. I have a QR code with all of my examples later on. So let's go to my worksheet. All right. So I have the select topic for the infographic databases they use for the research. Clarissa was actually in the class when we did this. So she was able to help them, what search statements to use or things like that. So they use all of that. And uh, before they use AI, I asked them to find references from the library that they think will be useful for their project. So they have, and I'm a big fan of team activities. So I asked them, you know, what would make a good team work and so on. And then part two is I asked them to say apple, and then this is about understanding text ethical news. So I asked them to write prompts and put that into ChatGPT. So for example, can you Mars explain this scientific concept for a first year student? Things like that. And then I asked them to copy and paste exact notes that ChatGPT generated and can validate, reflect on the response, exhibit on is the information accurate and trustworthy. So they have to go back and do their research on the entities as well. And the your clear points, your opinion, were not adequately substantiated. So it's not just, yes, ChatGPT gave them this response, but it's not just readily accepting it. They have to do their research as well. So this is critical evaluation, and people find the still basically from the point that you would stay. And then I asked them to request ChatGPT for 5 relevant sources. And then they have all of here. And then I asked them, can you compare the sources that ChatGPT gave out to the sources that you searched on your own? Are there any kind of similarities? Are they parallel? And so on. And then also to them to cross-check your references are subjected by ChatGPT. Are they or references? Are there any examples of hallucinating references? So this has evolved over time. In the beginning, I think the first version of ChatGPT, there is a lot of hallucinating references, but the version right now is actually better. So I'm going to show an example of what speech looks like. So from the discovery, what you references, and then this is where you revise all of their inputs. With the screens provided composed concise summary of what we understand about that topic. So this is now a revision of basically their own understanding of what the topic is based on the research and based on what ChatGPT gem. And I asked them to copy the conversation with ChatGPT. If you go to the right hand corner, there's a share. They can just paste the link, and I can also follow the thought process, the prompt engineering, how they change the prompts, and so on. And it always ends with a reflection because the reflection is where the learning actually comes in. So at this, in these students, what specific actions into understanding ChatGPT both ethically and responsibly. So this is an example uh, response we have here. So this is the references that we take, and we just shown what they said in their notes. This is what GPT gave out, and they said here. So they asked Britain travel, and then they said there was no everybody's receipt, but certain information was likely all were not included. For example, to get a time of Artemis 2 about 2025 and Artemis 27, this information is out of date. And that just gave me like, oh, okay, they are really researching the information that was given. And it between ChatGPT completely excludes Artemis 4, so they are ahead of and then it's just, a good exercise to the students. And then they said that these are the references that were suggested by ChatGPT. There was NASA official articles of the inquiry, but no link was provided. But it's actually legitimate. They went to the NASA website, and there is a link for it. And then this references in this case, they have no oxidate and then prompts verify the responses, and then that reflection. So that is how it always ends with AI activities. There will always be um. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, part of that activity that ask ChatGPT to generate sources. These are one of my earlier talks, and these are sources that are qualitative. These are not accurate. Um, it, it's different. But that it looks legit. But I also always tell my students they may look real. They give you links, but they can be errors in links, or they create citation was actually and same thing here. Not getting the title, but not getting title, and this is incorrect title, and so on. So that's again another eye-opening example for our students. So other examples that I did for my class, we have think, pair, share with AI. I'm going to share some more examples. Ask ChatGPT activities. We have prompt engineering exercises. We have the spot the hallucination challenges, bias detection, comparing AI responses with peer-reviewed or library-vetted sources. And again, as I always mentioned, reflection assignments and activities. So I'm going to share a couple more examples here that I use for my class. We have Ask ChatGPT activities. So the answer question, and we don't process how will you verify accuracy. So, for example, one student asks, "Is interstellar travel possible?" Because he just watched the movie Do, and then he refined those terms. He said there's like a lot of physics terms that he does not understand. So, explain science behind interstellar travel to a first-year non-science major. And it gave this information, and then they then verified the sources, the information seemed like resources. So again, iterative process. Is there bias? Is there something that's incorrect in there? And so on. And then we also do think, share, rate, the example. So my question to them was, in this activity, I asked them, does ChatGPT harm the environment? And we were wondering, what would ChatGPT say about itself? So this is the prompt. Again, I'm sharing this as a pure end. So individually, so think with ChatGPT. Ask ChatGPT, does ChatGPT harm the environment? So copy the response here. And the students will highlight or underline claims, statistics, and so on. Any statements of uncertainty or disclaimers. And then they write short reflection. Does this answer seem complete? What's missing? Enter concludes below. And they pair up with another student and they compare their answers. And their responses are not the same. Even if they ask the same question, the responses are not the same because what's the term Clarissa? It's like, um, you can find like it tailors to your own previous questions and like bias. Yeah, algorithmic bias. So it depends upon what they've been asking ChatGPT already. And then they share the responses on the board. And that's another way for us to have a discussion. So let me just share one sample student response here. So this is what ChatGPT said. Uh, Large data centers, the biggest impact, and so on. And it seems pretty complete, but I wish with more numbers, statistics instead of just general reference. I wanted it to delve deeper into how much work it costs instead of just stating that there is no environmental impact and things like that. So they're, thinking more deeply and critically about the situation. And compare this one to another student, they chat to get both companies the same or the answers no, mine is more about companies and the classmate is about individuals usage compared to a company. So I think they have different majors, so they have different algorithms there. And then we discussed in the board what the reports say to not it item having a footprint. They just gave us like a whole discussion about chip throughput and the impact. So those are some of the examples that I use in my classes where we integrated check. And then going back, so at the end of all the activities, I always ask my students to reflect because reflection is what turns AI use into actual learning. And without reflection, students will just think of ChatGPT as a shortcut or a simple machine that generates answers automatically for them. So the reflection actually asks encourages them to slow down, think back, sort of like stop and investigate do the same thing. Um, they think about what they asked, what they questions, and why they trusted or rejected the source, and then they go back into that information literacy again. So I just want to end my part here by sharing some student reflections because they're often much more nuanced than we expected. So I'm not sure why it's showing it that way, but there's a lot here, but I'm just gonna summarize them. So the prompt I use is what specific actions can you undertake to use ChatGPT both ethically and responsibly? The responses were actually very revealing. One student wrote, I'll use ChatGPT to simplify complex concepts, not to do my work, but to help me understand it better. Another said, I'll only use ChatGPT when my professor permits it. Do not always cross-check with other sources. Yes, we check up my statement. ChatGPT is a tool, not a replacement. And then, interestingly, there were some students who said that they will not use ChatGPT at all. So one wrote, I believe over-reliance on AI can erode creativity and research skills. And another compared ChatGPT to Wikipedia, a useful starting point, but not a reliable source. So I just find this diversity of perspectives really refreshing. It shows that students are not just really accepting of AI responses and that they're critically aware of how to use it as a tool rather than as a crutch or something to substitute for their thing. So that ends our talk, and we just want to invite you to reflect on two questions. And if you would like to share, feel free to raise your hand. But from what we've discussed today, what is one strategy that you could realistically implement, not next semester, but this coming semester? And what is one challenge to anticipate when doing so? So just think about that and we can discuss afterwards. And just some key takeaways. Be clear with your AI use policy, your expectations, fairly honest with reflection, and grounded in information literacy. And design assignments with AI supports but doesn't substitute thinking. So ultimately, the approach that we share um, allows students to use ChatGPT not as a shortcut, but something to help them engage critically and reflect in their thinking. So thank you. These are our email address. And if you're interested in using the class activities, I have that QR code. I'm going to include our presentation in this Google Drive as well. So I'm going to give a minute for that. And the last one is, I think, the survey. More.
this.
Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yay. Thank you. Actually, not really. They are very receptive to it. And I use it mostly in my complex problems class. So there's like, open ideas, open thinking. So they see it as something new, not just specific for their majors or something that they've known before. So I've never had that pushback in my classes. And you, I get pushback all the time. I can't tell you how many eye rolls I get when the librarian walks in the room. Um, but you would be surprised how receptive they are as soon as I say something they didn't know that they know. So it's still a valuable practice. And even if it's the one person in the room that didn't know, now they do. Mhm. Mhm. Yes, exactly. Okay, I think you are next. Yes. So yeah, that's a tough one. So brainstorming, it's just not supposed to be for one student. They can have like a thinking, an actual thinking person partner, and that will give them more feedback, right? So it's hard to answer that question, but yeah, my personal thought there is they're trained. The free version of ChatGPT people use is trained on a very large corpus of what's freely available online. The hallucination, misinformation comes as you try and get very specific information out of it, such as citations, very specific, nuanced approaches to topics. If you're asking and what year did X president exists and what are some issues about it, what are some issues with reading Frankenstein, what could I read about? That's been written enough in many different places where you can get a baseline idea, similar to if you went to Wikipedia or you asked Reddit, like, give me some controversial topic idea. Is it great? No. Is it a starting point if you don't know anything? Sure. Yeah, it's tough. It's okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. There is a lot. Yeah. It's actually a very tricky one because they were like, well, you're asking us to use it, so we are donating currently at this point. But I always tell them like it's here to stay, whether we like it or not. And we just have to do something about it in terms of like reducing its environmental impact, made improve water technology and things like that. But yes, there's a lot of dissonance to it, and there's a lot of split comments about it too. So that's why a lot of them actually been saying they were like, you think in my 19 students there were like 5% like I'm not gonna use it because I have one who's an environmental science major and was really very what do you call that? There's like a lot of pushback from the students. So there's a lot of opinions about it. But yes, there's clearly I this was I have a colleague who compares using AI to having to drive her days car where I have to get to work to make money to feed myself. And I know it's harming the environment.
and at the same time, I still have to do this, and I acknowledge it. So you could have a nuanced approach to much of that, where like I know AI is harming the environment, and I need to be able to adapt to be myself. Uh, both and doing it selectively, right? I live in DC and I have a car, so I use the metro, and then sometimes when I have to drive. That's a big, yeah.
AI for very specific directed questions. I understand that it's been very useful, the rubric, and I've taken loads of notes from your presentations. But my question is more like, so in cases of, courses, I teach sociology, critical social thought. So there are times when I have to use text, history, and then also kind of, the harder original text in order to help students, walk through the history of critical social thought. So, for example, if say if I ask them to expand on or write on commodity fetishism, for example, then what I have found is that students kind of just key in the topic and then they pull up something which can be grabbed from many, many, authors or sources which have written on commodity fetishism for so many years since Marx died in the 19th century. So my question would be then, when they pull up that, they will pull up some kind of a generated text from all these sources. So when they come up with that as the faculty or as a professor, is there a way how, or not just from the perspective of the faculty, but also from the perspective of the student itself, is there a way to distinguish between, say, plagiarism and generated text at this point? Because I find that it's like a jumbled text which is gathering from all the sources and with, of course, the hallucinations that you mentioned. So at that point, then how do we go forward and how do I help my students navigate that problem?
Thanks for putting that on me. I'm gonna say Allison Thomas. Actually, she's in the Office of Academic Integrity. She just gave a presentation at the Librarian yesterday. She did an excellent job of explaining the difference between like plagiarism and other kinds of integrity infractions. And I think what you're getting at is kind of that difference. Which, if I could pull out my notes and give the summary, that would be an excellent answer. So I don't have an answer, but I think Allison Thomas can help you get towards that.
Oh.
Yeah. Other questions?
I think we have lunch.
Yeah, lunch.
But we're happy to engage, and we have our email addresses right here if you have more questions. If you want to schedule Clarissa to go into our classes,
Email me now.
Clarissa.
It's about time. The
Yes.
schedule fills up.
yeah, she emails me at the very beginning of the semester. She just emailed me last Monday, so yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.